What happens when the leader needs her own medicine? In this raw, reflective solo episode, I share what it feels like to find yourself completely out of alignment, even while holding space for others to stay in theirs. I talk about the burnout that I didn't see coming, the ancestral sorrow that surfaced in my body, and the deep discomfort of feeling like a fraud when I couldn't follow my own message. But maybe that's where the most honest leadership begins, in the cracks. If you're leading while healing, this episode is for you. Leadership isn't about titles, it's not about hustle, and it's definitely not about fitting into somebody else's mould. Welcome to the Natural Leader Podcast, where we break the old rules to build a new kind of leadership, one that's authentic, intuitive, and fully aligned with who you are. I'm Lindsay Hilliard, and in each episode we'll explore self-awareness, transformation, and the embodiment of natural leadership. If you're ready to lead from a place of ease, confidence, and purpose, let's get started. Hi everyone, welcome back to the Natural Leader Podcast. I'm Lindsay. So here's the truth. I almost didn't record this episode. I've been burnt out. My neck and back are in pain. I've had to take time off my corporate job. And for a moment, I really felt like a fraud. I talk about alignment and I teach flow and I run a space called the Natural Leader Hub. And yet I found myself completely out of alignment. And that created this deep tension inside me. A voice that said, how can you lead others if you can't even follow your own message? So I want to talk about that today. Not as someone with all the answers, not as someone who's figured it all out, but as a woman who's in it, in the burnout, in the remembering, in the beautiful, uncomfortable tension between what was and what wants to be born. So this episode is for anyone who's ever felt like they should know better and still found themselves unraveling. You're not a failure, you're just human. And I hope this brings you permission to soften back into your truth. So here's where this all really started to unravel. For the past few months, I've been noticing this quiet undercurrent of tension. And I don't just mean emotional tension, I mean literal physical tightness in my body. My neck and back have been in intense pain, like constant, deep discomfort. And at first I just ignored it. Told myself it was stress or posture or just being busy. But it didn't go away. And then it got louder. The fatigue, brain fog, the sense that I was dragging myself through each day. Eventually it got to the point where I had to take a couple of weeks off my corporate work because my body was basically saying, I'm done. You're not listening, so I'm going to slow you down myself. And the truth is I wasn't listening. I was pushing through, showing up for everyone else, being the strong one, carrying the weight, leading my team, trying to manage the deadlines, but it didn't feel like it did before. It felt heavy, misaligned, like I was performing a version of leadership that I no longer believed in. And what made it harder was this voice inside me that said, but you talk about alignment, you teach flow, you're building an entire business around natural leadership, so how the hell did you end up here? And I'll be honest, I really had to sit with that because for a moment, I felt like the biggest fraud. I felt like I should know better. I felt like I'd betrayed my own message. But what I'm learning and what this burnout is teaching me is that this message isn't something I'm here to perform. It's something I'm here to live. And right now, living it looks like breaking down. It looks like stepping back. It looks like listening. And it looks like remembering how to follow what I already know. Because yes, I do guide others back into alignment, but recently I forgot how to follow it myself. My body started telling me long before I was ready to admit it. And it wasn't just physical. The more I slowed down, the more I started to feel things that had been pushed aside for a long time. That's when something interesting happened, something I didn't expect. So last week I had an appointment with my naturopath, who also does kinesiology and intuitive medicine. And during the energy healing part of the session, something came up that really landed with me. She found that I had a trapped emotion showing up, something that was inherited 3 generations back. And that emotion was sorrow. And before I move into what happened next, I just want to say this. Generational trauma is real. We're not just carrying our own stress or sadness. We inherit emotional patterns, beliefs, and even energetic imprints from the generations before us. There's now research showing that trauma can actually be passed down through our DNA. It's called epigenetic inheritance. And what that means is the emotional experiences of our ancestors, like fear, grief, helplessness, or suppression, can get stored in the body and re-expressed in future generations. So if you've ever felt a heaviness that you couldn't explain, a deep sadness that didn't seem like it belonged to your story, or a pattern you keep repeating that just feels older than you are, it's not your imagination. And that's why I wasn't surprised when, in my session with my naturopath, what came through wasn't just burnout. It was inherited sorrow. And suddenly, so much of what I'd been feeling, physically, emotionally, energetically, started to make sense. Now, I know some people might roll their eyes at that, but when she said it, my body knew sorrow, not sadness, not stress, sorrow. A kind of old, heavy grief, a sense of being stuck, of having no choice. And what shook me the most is that it didn't just feel like mine. It felt like something that was passed down. Like the sorrow of women who came before me, who had to stay quiet, who had to push through, and who had to carry burdens without relief, who didn't get to choose softness, who didn't get to rest. And here I was, a modern woman with language like alignment and sovereignty and truth. But underneath it all, I was still carrying the belief that I couldn't stop, that I didn't have a choice, that I had to hold it all together. And that's when the mirror really appeared. Because this message I've been sharing with the world about natural leadership, about coming back to your rhythm, about trusting your energy, it suddenly wasn't something that I was sharing for others. It was something that I desperately needed to hear myself. My own words became a mirror. And that reflection was uncomfortable. Not because I was being dishonest, but because I had drifted. I hadn't noticed how far I'd gone until my body, my emotions, and this quiet voice inside me said, "Come back." And that's the moment when I realized this message that I'm building, this movement I'm dreaming of, it's not mine because I've mastered it. It's mine because I'm still learning how to live it. And that's what makes it real. So here I am, someone who teaches alignment, who helps others come back to their natural energy, and I am also someone who forgot, who drifted, who burned out. And I think that's where real leadership begins. Because if I only spoke when I was fully in flow, or only showed up when everything looked neat and clean, then I'd be lying. The truth is I'm learning how to lead while I'm still healing. And I don't think we talk about that enough. We have this idea that leaders have to be a few steps ahead, always composed, always certain, always available. But what if real leadership is being willing to say, I'm still in it. I don't have all the answers, but I'm showing up anyway with honesty, with heart, and with presence. And what I've realized is this. My burnout doesn't make me a fraud. It makes me honest. My tiredness doesn't mean I'm unqualified. It means I'm human. And this message I've built about softness, truth, and flow, it's not invalidated by my breakdown. If anything, it's validated by it. Because I'm not here to model perfection. I'm here to model what it looks like to come home to yourself again and again when life pulls you away. And that to me is natural leadership. It's not about never falling out of alignment. It's about not abandoning yourself when you do. It's about choosing your personal integrity over performance. It's about leading anyway, from the middle of the mess, from the depth of the lesson, and from the heart of your own healing. So what do I do now that I've seen it? Now that the mirror's been held up and I can't unsee where I've drifted. I reclaim my choice. I reclaim the truth that I am not stuck, that I am not powerless, that I am not here to carry the unspoken grief of generations who didn't get to choose rest, softness, or self-trust. I reclaim my rhythm. I stop apologizing for the pace that my body asks of me. I reclaim my leadership, not the kind that looks perfect from the outside, but the kind that begins inside me, quiet, truthful, and sacred. I reclaim my message because it's not broken, it's not a lie, it's just that I've had to live it more deeply. I had to walk it into the dark so I could speak from a place that was real. And maybe that's what you need to hear too, that you're allowed to pause. You're allowed to question it all. You're allowed to lead from the middle of your healing and not from the end of it. You are still the message. You are still the medicine, and you are still the leader, even here, especially here. So what I'm reclaiming right now is gentleness, trust, and the sacred reminder that I never needed to perform to be powerful. I just needed to come back home. So if you're still listening, thank you. Thank you for letting me speak from this raw, real place, not as someone with it all figured out, but as someone holding the mirror. Because I know I'm not the only one standing in this tension between what we know and what we're still learning to live. I know I'm not the only one who's tired, who's questioning, who's craving something softer, deeper, and more true. So I'm holding this mirror, not just for me, but for us, to show that it's okay to pause. It's okay to not have it all together. It's okay to be the leader and the one who's healing. You're not a fraud. You're not broken. You're not behind. You are becoming. And that's what the Natural Leader Hub is all about. It's not a space for polished perfection. It's a space where truth is safe, where we get to lead from our wholeness, not from hustle, not from pressure, not from performance. So if your body's whispering, come home, like mine did, the hub is open to you. Come sit with us. You don't have to lead alone. And if this is resonating with you, I've also created a free somatic release meditation for you to download and listen to when the time is right. I originally created this for myself, but I found it to be so powerful that I wanted to share it with you too. You can find the link to that in the show notes. So thank you again for listening. If you know another leader who's feeling a bit lost or feeling like they're constantly pushing, send them the link to this episode. It might just be the permission that they need to pause and reconnect to themselves as well. Until next time, be yourself, trust yourself, and show up as a leader you were born to be.